The service begins with ringing a bell 3 times, after which the minister enters the hall and is seated. We sing and a Bible text is shared. The minister offers a sermon followed by silent prayer. Together we recite, Our Father, who art in heaven. After a blessing and another song, the service comes to an end. Now that sounds a little like us in broad strokes. We ring chimes, we sing, we sit in silence, I talk. But also not us. Weekly Bible texts and Our Fathers would not sit comfortably in this congregation. And yet it is us. This is the flow of a European Unitarian service. If you were at the Unitarian Church in Budapest, Hungary today, you'd hear bells ringing, recite prayers, and listen to Bible stories. Now, this doesn't sound like my Easter Sunday, like Charlotte. I was raised in an Easter holiday of rabbits and Easter egg hunts, chocolate, and family. But it is the Easter Sunday of many Europeans, many Unitarians in Europe. Like Hungary and Romania, there are homegrown Unitarian churches in Poland and the Czech Republic, in Germany and the Netherlands, in England and elsewhere. And many of these will actually offer communion at Easter, not as a sacrament, but in memory of Jesus, this wise guide. Most Unitarians in Europe have bloomed into an open, progressive Christianity. And I encourage you to seek them out online using Google Translate and explore their ways of being you. I think you'll find resonance with their emphasis on freedom of belief, their understanding of Jesus, and their work for social justice. Now, as well as those homegrown Unitarians that have deep roots in those countries, there are also English-speaking UU fellowships all over, from Paris, France to Basel, Switzerland. And these are mainly organized by North American UUs, expatriates who want to celebrate their religious faith that they brought with them from North America. In those fellowships, I think we would all feel right at home. And so while I like to think of us as the cutting edge of Unitarian Universalism, and perhaps we are post-Christian, post-modern, grounding our theology in earth and community, we are also only one small part of this global religious tradition. The Hungarian Unitarian Church leads Unitarians in both Hungary and Romania, what was once Transylvania, and it is the oldest church system of ours in the world. This is a church which elects its officials, including a bishop, the highest position. And so we have a Unitarian bishop. His name is Istvan Kovacs, and he was elected last year for a 6-year term. It sounds odd to me, and yet this is Unitarianism. It's essentially Unitarian theology. God is one, and Jesus was not divine, but that very human Jesus, a friend who walks with us, a sage who offers sound counsel. So if you're looking for our deepest roots, it's here in Hungary, home of Unitarian kings and bishops, where they base their tradition on faith and freedom. And they have good reason to take freedom of religion seriously. They've been fighting oppression in the century after the Edict of Torda, when later kings tried to suppress Unitarianism, to being again repressed under the communist regime after World War II. In both eras, they lost people to forced conversions. They lost their buildings and land to those in power. To be Unitarian here has included times when it's dangerous to be Unitarian. Under communism, many ministers were sentenced to prison and forced labor. They've also experienced shifting political boundaries and identities, war after war. And I can only imagine the strength of faith it must take to stay true to one's convictions in the face of such oppression. To find that strong rock to stand on, unwavering despite the storms. And people did find a rock to stand on. So many that when the communists left for good, the church rose again with people coming together and raising funds to build new buildings, to establish a theological college and recreate their free faith once more. And so despite all of the repressions, the Hungarian Church is the second largest in the world with over 80,000 members in 2 countries. This is a strong strand of our Unitarian global tradition, our deepest root. Now for myself, I do tend to dismiss Easter as that particular Christian holiday that holds very little theological meaning for us as Unitarians, since we are by and large united in agreement that Jesus was mostly asking us to be nicer to one another and was not the Son of God, resurrected, rising bodily to heaven. But this week, I have found meaning in this ancient celebration of grief and hope. Thinking about the history of our Hungarian and Romanian companions who've only lived under democracy for the last 30 years, who are watching their neighbors in Ukraine under attack for simply being Ukrainian. I honor their steadfast, rock-firm faith. And I wonder if they feel as the early followers of Jesus might have felt this Easter time. Despair at the loss, despair at the needless death, but finding hope in the morning. Not the hope of heaven, but the hope of community, of people turning to each other in crisis and caring for one another. And for me, this is the hope of Easter morning, the promise of religious community to be together in times of pain and crisis, that no one of us suffers alone. We can't stop each other's suffering, but we can witness and care for each other in the crisis. And the Hungarian Unitarian Church is doing just that. They are working to help the Ukrainian refugees arriving in Romania. Through their justice organization, Unitarian Providence Charity, they provide food and supplies, particularly for women and children who are arriving so little. Reverend Attila Bayas of the Providence Charity says, in a world where everything can turn upside down in a second, where any one of us can suddenly become a refugee, the only thing we can do is hold on to our humanity, to hold on to each other. Human kindness is our only choice. It binds us together. It helps ease each other's suffering. This is our Unitarian Easter promise, that we take care of each other. Reverend Attila Bayas says, in a world where everything can turn upside down in a second, where any one of us can suddenly become a refugee, the only thing we can do is hold on to our community, to hold on to each other. Human kindness is our only choice. It binds us together and helps ease each other's suffering. This is what we can find in Easter, that promise that we take care of each other. And I was struck by one of the things Reverend Attila asserts, that any one of us can suddenly become a refugee. I know that some of you know this, having been refugees yourselves or having relatives in that position. But for me, that thought was a new one. I very much own a white middle-class Canadian complacency that it could never happen to me. I am good and nice and live rightly and don't cause trouble, which my misguided mind somehow translates into some kind of shield from life's dangers. Now, life has proved me utterly wrong, of course, and the pandemic is just the latest example. None of us can escape the larger forces of pandemics and politics and climate crisis and financial strain. No one is immune to war. People like me, nice, smart, middle-class people, are hiding in basements in the Ukraine. They're getting bombed at railway stations. They're leaving with a suitcase under one arm and the dog under another. And I would say it is unimaginable, and yet I see it in photos every day. It can happen to anyone. Here, it might be caused by the climate crisis or financial collapse, but it can happen. All we can do in the face of this crisis in Ukraine and any other crisis of today is to take care of each other. Human kindness is our only choice. It binds us together and helps us ease each other's suffering. I think this is the meaning of the Hungarian Unitarian Church's symbol, to find that steady faith, to trust each other, to accept others as they are, and to seek the wisdom of this serpent, to see the whole, to seek to understand what is happening, and find ways to improve the situation, to act, to see it clearly and not deny it, but live in that space of active hope, where you don't know what the outcome will be of your choices, but you live according to your values and make the choices you can to live them out. As well as being that wise, clear serpent, to also be as gentle as the dove of peace. We must be a gentle people, hurting no one, working always for peace and cooperation. And of course, this is not so straightforward in times of crisis, to be wise and gentle, firm and free. It is very easy to be otherwise, to fall deep into anxiety, to get stuck in rage or sorrow. It takes strength to get past those darker feelings and to keep choosing to help. It takes courage to think for ourselves and accept the consequences. And we will all fail, and we just have to keep trying. I've appreciated this week that metaphor, to be serpent wise and dove gentle, to see clearly and act with kindness. And I feel in some ways this is the most basic of human operating instructions, the essential message of the story of Jesus, as well as most etiquette manuals, to see each other's humanity and to treat each other with kindness no matter the circumstances. It's the essence of our first principle, to respect and honor the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And I don't think we would need these reminders if it was easy. We wouldn't need this chalice community if we were always so clear, so kind, so peaceful. We wouldn't need the depth and breadth of Unitarianism if we knew how to live in these uncertain times. Many people are struggling right now. There's grief for those we've lost, for those we might lose. There's exhaustion from this uneven pandemic. There's worry and trauma coming at us from all sides. And despite all of this, kindness matters. So we'll keep trying and falling down, and we'll get back up and keep practicing our ability to be doves. And look to one another here in this child's community for help, and look to our European companions with curiosity to learn what we can from their history and their understanding of our shared faith. May we find the rock of faith firm beneath our feet. May we be serpent wise and dove gentle, and practice kindness, that most basic and essential human choice. So say we all.